Teacher Talking Sports, which does we do how we live. And let's continue the series I've been doing, where I name who I believe are the four best players in each decade in MLB history. So I started with the 2010s. Now I am on the 1980s. So tough to do, tough to limit to four people. But let's take a look at the Mount Rushmore, and I'll talk more about the four players I included as the video goes on. But in alphabetical order by last name, and man, this is a hot corner heavy Mount Rushmore. We got Wade Boggs, George Brett, Rickey Henderson, and Mike Schmidt. So that is my 1980s Mount Rushmore. Three guys that predominantly played third base and are not arguably is the best leadoff hitter of all time in Rickey Henderson. Now, this decade there was no clear-cut top starting pitcher. I mean, guys like Doc Gooden and Roger Clemens pitched like half the decade. Brett Saberhagen did win 2 Cy Youngs. Nolan Ryan, of course, did his thing. But I didn't think any of them did enough to be included. Some of my other honorable mentions, Dale Murphy was someone I widely considered. So Murphy and Gooden I widely considered, even though neither of them are in the Hall of Fame at the moment. But other guys, Cal Ripken Jr., Ryan Sandberg, Robin Yount, Eddie Murray, to name a few. So let's take a look at the four guys I included, starting with Wade Boggs. So Wade Boggs played the 1980s all with the Red Sox, but his career started in 1982. So in those 8 seasons, Boggs batted .352 with a .922 OPS, 150 OPS plus, 64 homers, 314 doubles, 1,597 hits, 823 runs scored, 523 RBIs. Now, Boggs more than doubled his walks, had more than double walks than strikeouts, so he had 754 walks compared to 339 strikeouts, giving him a stellar .443 on-base percentage for the decade. So Boggs had MVP finishes of 4th, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 12th in the decade. He won 5 Silver Sluggers in that 8th season. Boggs won the batting title 5 times in those 8 seasons, and his lowest batting average over that time was .325, led the league in on-base percentage 6 times, led the league in OPS twice led the league in walks. From 86 to 89, had more than 100 walks in each season, never had more than 61 strikeouts in a season. In both 88 and 89, led the league in doubles, 51 doubles in 1989, had 6 seasons of at least 40 doubles. Never a power hitter, but 1987 he hit a career high 24 homers. Had 100 runs every season from 1983 to 1989. Also had more than 200 hits in all those seasons, which is impressive because he walks so much. But in 1985, led the AL with 240 hits. Wade Boggs, my first guy of the 1980s Mount Rushmore. Next, we got George Brett. So George Brett played the entire decade. Of course, played his whole career with the Royals, so all of it from 1980 to 1989. So in the decade, Brett batted .311 with a .913 OPS, 150 OPS plus, hit 193 homers, drove in 851 runs, 303 doubles, 768 runs scored, 79 stolen bases. So in the 80s, Brett started the decade, so 1980 was named the AL MVP, also finished as the runner-up in 1985. Brett won 3 Silver Sluggers and a Gold Glove in 1985, was an all-star in each of the first 9 seasons of the decade. 1980 nearly batted .400, batted .390, won the batting title, also led the league in on-base percentage and slugging and OPS that year. Led the league in OPS 3 times, also OPS plus 3 times. Brett batted over .300 6 times for the decade. Had 3 seasons with over 100 RBIs, 2 seasons with over 100 runs. Had 6 seasons with at least 20 homers, including 30 in the 1985 seasons. 4 seasons with double-digit stolen base totals. George Brett won a World Series with the Royals in 1985 in that postseason. Batted .360 with a 1,075 OPS, was the ALCS MVP. George Brett, the second guy of my 1980s Mount Rushmore. Next, again, probably the all-time great leadoff hitter, Rickey Henderson. So Henderson played from 1980 to 1984 with the Athletics, 1985 to 1988 with the Yankees, started in 1989 with the Yankees, was traded to the back to the Oakland Athletics. So for the decade, Henderson batted .291 with an 839 OPS, 137 OPS plus, 137 homers. Of course, his main thing was stealing bases. He had 838 stolen bases, walked 962 times compared to 697 strikeouts. 1,122 runs scored and 535 RBIs. So for the decade, he had MVP finishes of 2nd, 3rd, 9th, and 10th in the American League. He won 2 Silver Sluggers, was a Gold Glove winner in 1981, totaled 8 All-Star appearances for the decade. Also led the league in stolen bases every season except 1987 and 1987 and his first season in 1987. I'm sorry. That was the only season in the decade he didn't lead the league in stolen bases. He had 3 seasons of at least 100 stolen bases. 3 seasons where he led the league in walks. Those were 3 of 4 seasons. He had at least 100 walks. He batted over 300 4 times in the decade. Led the league in runs 4 times. Had a total of 8 seasons with at least 100 runs scored. Rickey Henderson, just, seen as the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. Also had 2 seasons with over 20 homers and another 3 of at least 12. Third guy in the Mount Rushmore, and let's end with a guy many consider the best third baseman of all time, Michael Jack Schmidt. So his career actually ended in 1989, so played the whole decade with the Phillies. For that decade, Schmidt batted .277 with a 925 OPS, 153 OPS plus, 313 homers, 929 RBIs, 832 runs scored. So from 1980 to 1989, I clicked off it. He won MVP 3 times in the decade, 1980, 1981, and 1986. He also had MVP finishes of 6th, 3rd, 6th, and 7th for the decade. 3 times in the decade, led the league on base percentage, 4 times in slugging, 5 times in OPS, 3 times in walks, had 2 seasons where he had over 100 walks, led the league in RBIs 4 times, he had 5 seasons of at least 100 RBIs. Led the league in homers 5 times. Each of the first 8 seasons in the decade, Schmidt hit at least 33 homers, had 48 in 1980. 3 seasons with at least 100 runs scored. Schmidt made 8 All-Star appearances for the decade, and he started off the decade winning a World Series with the Phillies in 1980. So there you have it. Those are my 1980s Mount Rushmore. Again, 3 third basemen: Wade Boggs, George Brett, Mike Schmidt, and then Rickey Henderson. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my Mount Rushmore. Not an easy one, but tomorrow I'll be doing the 1970s. Anyhow, don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend to subscribe. Like the video, share the video, hit the bell for notifications. I'm out.